Hey, shalom, shalom,
Shalom.
shalom. How you want to walk, which is a good day. Knock na waha bar yashala. Hawalakim la dam call shabuai bahacha. Wakak show Yahweh bahasham Yahweh ma'amat, which is truly. Hey, with the Hebrew Israelites coming to you week in and week out through the spirit and power of Yahweh bahasham Yahweh to preach to you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indian citizens, like foreigners. Nachamatam kayahamalako hashemayim korab. Repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Before we get started, I'm going to say, call Laim La, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shah, Bahasham, Chahak, a double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us this truth and rule well. And much respect to you, bros out there pushing this truth with all righteousness and sincerity. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
As always, going to a morning edification through the Spirit. I don't want to Zaza about name Lord's will. This is edifying. And pretty much we going into First Corinthians, the 11th chapter and the 4th verse. And I'm going to get that. This is First Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 4. I'm gonna start at verse 1. It says, "Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Hamashiach. And I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things and keep the ordinances as I delivered them to you." Because Paul was directly taught by Hamashiach. And he was ordained as a minister, an apostle to the Gentiles. You know, but a lot of times people like to discredit. You got a few individuals that like to discredit Paul's teachings. When they was of the Spirit. I'm gonna continue on. It says, "But I would have you know that the head of every man is Hamashiach, and the head of every woman is the man, and the head of Hamashiach is the Most High." So it's a certain order. All right, going back to the ordinances that were mentioned. The Lord does things. He likes things to be decently and in order, because without order, you have confusion and you have people not, individuals not knowing what they're supposed to do. So again, the Lord works for order. Verse 4: Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head. All right, and being that our head is a Mashiach, by doing those particular acts, that's dishonoring our head, You see, and then also it goes back to a heathenistic custom. And I want to get basically a summarization of covering your head. When you got your head covered, that's pretty much wearing hats and not having the top of your head exposed, because we're supposed to have the crown of our head exposed. When praying and prophesying. You got people that wear fitted caps. When that custom actually goes back to a Greekish fashion. Like we got the title of the video. I'm gonna get another one real quick if you didn't have nothing.
Okay, go
This is Jeremiah chapter 10, and we'll get verse 1. It says, "Hear ye the word which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them." Verse 3: "For the customs of the people are vain, for one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workman with the axe." All right. Now the customs of the people are vain. When you go into this word vain, it's habal, all right, which means to be led astray. And that's pretty much what we're going to be going into, because when you start to ascribe to these different customs, then Jake, he see you doing it, and Jake is impressionable. For the most part, Jake's impressionable, so he gonna start doing it, and we've seen this throughout history. That's why the Lord said, "Hey, the customs of the people are vain. Don't follow out the way of the heathen." You see, because then when Jake ascribes to the way of the heathen, then he wants to bring it into um, the truth, or make it a part of his lifestyle, when that's not what we was designed to do.
ahead. That's why when we were coming into the land of Canaan, the Lord had us take out all those Canaanites, man, because He knew,
Mm-hmm.
Jake would, easily fall into those ways, right? Whenever it's around, Jake is gonna pick up on, whatever little customs that they see the heathen, taking part in. I just want to grab
Mm-hmm.
this real quick. This is 2 Kings 17, and I'll start at verse 14. It reads, "Notwithstanding, they would not hear, but hardened their necks, like unto the neck of their fathers, that did not believe the Lord their power, and they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers. and his testimonies which he testified against them, and they followed vanity and became vain, and went after the heathen that were round about them, concerning whom the Lord had charged them that they should not do like unto them. And they left all the commandments of the Lord their power, and made them molten images, even 2 calves, and made a grove, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served Baal. But the point, right, is that we went after the heathen, man. Right, we continue to go, and follow their customs, follow their vanity, right? Just in the same way our forefathers had, in the past, man.
Mm-hmm. What was that? Second Kings, what?
Uh, 17 and 14 through 16.
Okay. Can we grab second Maccabees 4 and starting at verse 11?
God, it's the book of Second Maccabees, chapter 4 and verse 11. And the royal privileges granted of the special favor to the Jews by the means of John, the father of Eupolemus, who went ambassador to Rome for amnesty and aid, he took away, and putting down the governments which were according to the law, he brought up new customs against the law.
Mm-hmm. Now I got a quick precept going into that. This is Proverbs. This is Proverbs chapter 8, and we'll get verse 36. It says, "But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul, and all that hate me love death." All right, and how do you do this? You show hate for the Lord, by one way is doing this. It says he brought up new customs against the law. So somebody that's in that particular mindset, they don't repent, they'll be destroyed because they ultimately showing that they love death. Because they're going directly against the ordinances that the Lord established. So if you prophesying with a fitted cap, if you prophesying with your head cut with do rags on, that's off. And you'll be destroyed if you don't repent. You know.
Mhm. God, continuing on. For he built gladly a place of exercise under the tower itself, and brought the chief young men under his subjection, and made them wear a hat.
So that's this is well, we can get more on to it or more edification on it, but pretty much that's where the custom of wearing a hat came from, the Greekish fashion. You know, it's not one of our ways. That came from the Greeks. You know,
God.
but it says for he built gladly a place of exercise. Now we know in Greece, they had gymnasiums, which the Greek word gymnastics. It shares the word gymnos. It was encouraged to exercise and to work out naked. So they made gymnasiums, which specifically, or more specifically, applies to indoors. You see, but also stemming from that, they had like the Olympics and track and field and stuff like that, which we'll get in verse 14. Pretty much they was encouraging people to compete naked. You know,
Hmm.
but again, it goes into gyms as well as the stadiums because they had the outdoor events and things as such. You keep going. Oh, actually, wait, yeah, you keep going.
God. Verse 13. Now, such as was the height of Greek fashions, and
So this is when Hellenization was super prevalent. When all of this was coming up. And each society will see this, or the Greek Rome, because in Greece, they was holding the games. In Rome, they was holding the games, if I'm not mistaken. Greece, they would have wrestling. That's why when we look at sports nowadays, like wrestling, track, they wearing them super tight stuff because it goes back to the Greekish fashions and the time of Hellenization. You know,
God, I think that's in all sports at this point too.
yeah.
There you go,
And what's
football,
what- what's
baseball,
what's
this.
wild is the uniforms have been getting tighter. You
Right.
know, could we get that? We don't got to read the whole thing, but we can read some of that article on the Olympics.
God. So this is an article from medium.com. It reads, nudity was encouraged during the ancient Olympics, the shocking history of the naked Olympics. It reads, for a long time, nudity in both training and competing formed an integral part of the Olympics. The naked Olympics started in the 8th century and became a regular tradition for several years, according to historical records. The Olympic Games have a rich history, and for many years athletes competed naked. The games were usually held in Olympia, an ancient rural sanctuary site dedicated to the worship of the Greek god Zeus. As a tribute to Zeus, the athletes
So,
displayed their. Okay.
so they basically, it's another article. They basically was doing that. They said they showed male appreciation because uh, so-called, the male was supposed to be the representation of the mythological god, so to speak.
Mhm.
Which
It
that's
says,
that, and that's one reason that the Lord said don't take on the ways of the heathen because that actually stems to idolatry. You know,
yep, okay. It says, as a tribute to Zeus, the athletes display their muscular physique and physical power. Showing off uh, was also a way to intimidate other competitors. The people saw competition as a way to earn respect.
I got a
Just like
quick
you were saying.
precept.
I was like,
You can go ahead and finish your point.
oh, well, just like you were saying, they using their bodies, to show reverence to these idols, man. You know.
I got a quick one. This is Ecclesiastes, also Quahalath, chapter 10. We'll give verse 6. It says, "Folly is set in great dignity, and the rich sit in low place." All right, and this is chiefly in America, Babylon the Great. You see, but America, Babylon the Great is nothing but a revamped version of Rome. You see, and also Greece. Because going into Westernization, that's Hellenization 2.0. But
Mhm.
the rich sit the set in low place in all these different societies because we was always in captivity. And then also it says folly is set in great dignity because pretty much honoring a so-called deity, that's idolatry. So that's folly. That sends back to folly. We keep going.
God, let's get this off the comment board real quick.
Okay.
It's from the priest out here in Charlotte, Amawan Ariyah. Shalom Alek. It's Leviticus 18 and verse 6. None of you shall approach to any that is near of kin to him to uncover their nakedness. I am the Lord. So that in itself, right? A bunch of men walking around naked together, just like they had the bathhouses, things of that nature
Mm-hmm.
back then, right? That was a heathen custom, man, right? And this is something, the law, statutes, and commandments give us strict orders on what to do and what not to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? So things like this, you see Esau, Edom, and the rest of these heathen, go in direct opposition, to the ways that we follow, man. And it shows in these various representations, man.
And even nowadays, like you go into the locker room, they still doing the shit. It show you
Yep.
that they was the Greeks and the Romans back then because they totally comfortable, with doing things like that.
God. What you want me to grab? Oh, you want to keep
Oh
going that Maccabees?
yeah, the back to the article just a little bit more.
God. It continues on and reads, the early 8th century BC will forever be remembered as the period during which many Olympian athletes went completely nude during competitions. The tradition of naked competition is reported to have started in 720 BC. Records from Athenian philosopher Plato, Homer's Iliad, and several graphic paintings all show that it was quite common for male track and field athletes to compete naked. In his book, The Guide to Greece, what's it say? Pausians, a Greek travel writer, also wrote about this strange tradition.
Yeah, that was pretty much the point though, because that's the reason why if we ever look at back when we was in school and stuff like that, they'll have the different pottery things, and then it'll have like somebody like competing, like throwing a javelin, completely like with no clothes on. That goes back to the Greekish fashions. That goes back to the ways of Esau. But we can keep going in that the Maccabees.
Uh, this is the book of Second Maccabees, chapter 4, and verse 13. Now, such was the height of Greek fashions, an increase of uh, heathenish manners through the exceeding profaneness of Jason, that ungodly rich, and no high priest.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty much he was a Jake that was going off. He was
Right.
ascribing to the ways of the heathen. He was the one going back to verse 12. It says he made him wear a hat, and then also was involved with like the building of the place of exercise, going to the gyms and the different events of the Greeks.
hmm Yeah, like the priest put on the comment board, they would go back and sew their foreskins back on, because it was popular to have that was the fashion, back in the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they had these men walking around with no clothes on, right? They would try to shame Jake into having their foreskins placed back on. So that was like big business back then, you know.
Man.
Continuing on. Oh, and going into Jason, because he was that wicked high priest, right? He got his brother Onias killed, so that he could take that high seat, and then he went in and made these covenants with the Greeks.
I got that for you.
Okay.
This is this first Maccabees chapter 1, and we'll get verse 11. It reads, in those days went there out Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them we have had much sorrow.
hmm That's it. The men who are trusted in leadership, as we got on the comment board here, that these men were trusted to lead our people in the correct ways, but they continue to sell them out pretty much, man. And then we're seeing these same things, take place today, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
seeing the leaders of our people walk our people into the slaughterhouse, and give our people over to the Greekish fashions of today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna read this real quick. Jim is shining light by. It's Jeremiah 23 and verse 2. It reads, therefore, thus saith the Lord power of Israel, against the pastors that feed my people, you have scattered my flock and driven them away, and have not visited them. Behold, I will visit upon you the evil of your doings, saith the Lord. And that's what we're seeing, right? Those judgments are about to start coming over, in a great magnitude, man, because we've seen people who've been entrusted, you know, to give our people the correct guidance are leading them
Mm-hmm.
into the ways of the heathen, man.
Right. We keep going in the Maccabees.
Uh, this is Second Maccabees 4 and verse 14. That the priest had no courage to serve any more at the altar, but despising the temple and neglecting the sacrifices, hastened to be partakers of the unlawful allowance in the place of exercise, after the game of discus called them forth.
So pretty much Hakahanyam, which is the priest, you know, their job is to be in the temple, doing the temple duties and doing things that have something to do with the temple. But pretty much they was more so into the Greek way of life. And if we actually get at another version, it'll tell you that as soon as discus was called, they was like they was out of there. I'm gonna read it again. It says that the priest had no courage to serve anymore at the altar, but despising the temple and neglecting the sacrifices, so that they were being negligent. It says hasten to be partakers. So pretty much they would, it's like you feel like doing something, so you drop what you're doing right now, and then you go do something else. That's why it says hasten. It says hasten to be hasten to be partakers of the unlawful allowance in the place of exercise as the game of discus. Now this is going into like the again, it's chiefly into gymnasiums, but then also the different events, because discus goes into like a track and field event. But it's showing you that Jake was pretty much more so willing to be into a sport folly versus actually doing his job, because we get because you get Ecclesiastes 12 and 13, Baba Shah,
Okay.
and that's also why I brought out Ecclesiastes 10 and 6, because that's folly. Folly is set in great dignity when the heathen are in rulership. All right, we've seen that a lot. When Esau Edom has rule, Jake is into basketball, Jake is into boxing, Jake is into UFC, Jake is into pretty much upholding all these things over the Lord. Going into how folly is set in great dignity. They putting a over importance on these things.
Uh, to Ecclesiastes 12 and
13.
13. It says, Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man.
That's the whole duty of man. You see, and being that they was the priests, that was their specific job, the temple duties, and they was neglecting it for the ways of the Greeks. You know,
Mm-hmm. And
we keep
scriptures
on.
talk about,
Are you?
it's a lot.
You go. You got it.
Um, Let me see if I can find this. Like,
Okay.
it's going into how our people are quick to run towards wickedness, or that guy right here. It's Jeremiah 14 and verse 10, and it says, "Thus saith the Lord unto this people, thus have they loved to wander; they have not refrained their feet.
So, like,
Therefore, the Lord."
can you?
I go,
Uh, you said they love to wander, right?
mhm.
So in Jeremiah, if I can mention Jeremiah 10 and verse 2 and 3, it said, "Learn not the way of the heathen, for the way of the heathen is in vain." And when you go into that word "vain," it's habar, which means to be led astray, like wandering. That's why the Lord said, not to follow after the customs and the lifestyles of the people round about us. If I can add.
Okay. Jeremiah 14 and 10. Thus saith the Lord unto this people, thus have they loved to wander; they have not refrained their feet. Therefore the Lord doth not accept them, and he will not remember their iniquity and visit their sins. Right. So just like the brother said, man, our people, they love to go after the ways, that are contrary to the scriptures, man. Right. They love to seek these idols, you know, and they're being taught to do so. Right. If they were being taught righteousness, it would be one thing, but we see them repeatedly, having wickedness pushed in their face from a young age, right? So now this is all they know, right? So that's why you see the state of our people from the Greek captivity to the Roman captivity, right? That's why they were looked at as heathen, going into Rome. They were completely that olive branch that was cut off, man, because they had been there for 1,000 years, going into these Roman and Greekish ways, man.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to get this real quick.
Okay.
Um, First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 41, just going into how uh, why Jake was going into these different ways, man. Right? Why the leadership, had gone astray from the responsibilities of the temple. It's First Maccabees 1 and verse 41. It reads, "Moreover, Antiochus wrote to the whole kingdom that all should be one people." And that's what we're seeing right now, right? Everybody, they're pushing that one world order, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says, "And everyone should leave his laws." So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. So they're being convinced, being coaxed into leaving, our customs. It says, "Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, to sacrifice unto idols and profane the Sabbath." So this was the beginning of that Hellenization.
Mm-hmm.
"For the king has sent letters by messengers to Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and the festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, as we mentioned, right? That's another of the Greekish fashions, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. Right. So we watched, Jake continue to degenerate. you know.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get back into Second Maccabees, you see Jason, is a representation of that, man.
Mm-hmm.
Continuing on in the Second Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 14, that the priests had no courage to serve any more at the altar, but despising the temple and neglecting the sacrifices, hastened to be partakers of the unlawful allowance in the place of exercise. After the game of discus was called them forth,
Mm-hmm.
not setting, it's like not setting by the honors of their fathers, but liking the glory of the Grecians best of all.
So they wasn't trying to uphold the scriptures. They was more so in the ways of the Greekish fashions, and that's why the Lord said, to not learn the way of the heathen. Because pretty much
Mhm.
once you put one thing, once you learn one thing, pretty much Jake is like with sin. Jake is like it's like candy. Jake got to keep going. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
at the same time, Jake is impressionable, so he gonna try to put the things that the ways that heathen and put into the truth. That's why we see God's prophesying and fitted caps. That's why we see God's making rap video. All these are the ways of the heathen. These don't go back to
Mhm.
our customs, and these are pretty much the same people coming back in the regeneration.
That's it.
But we can go down to verse 17.
Okay. Second Maccabees 4 and 16. By reason whereof sore calamity came upon them, for they had them to their enemies and avengers, whose custom they followed so earnestly, and unto whom they desired to be like in all things.
So it says, by reason whereof sore calamity came upon them, because the Lord is not a the scripture says the Lord is not mocked. So if you're going against the scriptures, you're an Israelite, you're gonna be judged for that. It says, by reason whereof sore calamity came upon them, for they had them to be their enemies and avengers. So pretty much they was taking on the ways of their oppressors.
Mhm.
Jake has always had that Stockholm syndrome. It says, whose custom they follow so earnestly, and unto whom they desire to be like in all things. So Jake was doing this in everything. Jake was ascribing to how they ate. Jake was ascribing to the religions. You know,
Mhm.
going into the different so-called gods that they had. Jake was going into everything in of Greece. Pretty good. That's the term Hellenist. Pretty much taking on that lifestyle and making it your own. You know,
Yep.
and that just stemming from the lesson that we did last week. Those was the true Gentiles, the Israelite foreigners, because it was taking on the ways of the heathen. Going back to the Maccabees. But I'm a
I got this quick preset for you, and I'm gonna grab this one off the comment board too.
con-
This is Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 31. It reads, "Envy thou not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways." Right?
Mhm.
Then that was they envied the Greeks, right? Because the Greeks had been set up in that high esteem. And just like right now, Jake is envious of Esau, in America. So the
Mhm.
westernized philosophy, Jake is completely taking hold on, right? So he's choosing all of their ways. And like it read here, it said they desire to be like in all things, man. So that's why you see, Eve with the blonde hair. That's why you see
Mhm.
Jake going after, the customs of Esau, man, in all shape, forms, and fashions, man. Right? And then just a real quick off the comment board, GMS shining like Bob, Proverbs 12 and 26. The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduceth him. Right? So they get seduced, by these these Gentile activities, man, right?
Mhm.
The wickedness that we see the heathen take part in, it seduces Jake. It calls them in, right? Because it looks sweet, right? It looks like they're having fun, But Jake has to understand that being in order is the only way that you're gonna be able to prosper, right? We can't prosper going after the ways of the heathen. They
Right.
were they were given those ways, because they're lesser than us, man. We're be it like it reads, we're more excellent than they are, right? We're of
Mhm.
a higher order, a higher esteem than they are. So we have a higher standard that we have to live by, and we see the result of the vile, the base man. being in, in rulership, man, because he pushes all these ways upon every living soul, man.
I got a quick one. This is Jeremiah chapter 5 and verse 26. It says, For among my people are found wicked men." All right, going into individuals in the spirit of Jason, setting them different covenants with the heathen.
Mhm.
It says they lay wait as he that setteth snares. They set a trap, they catch men, because the scriptures called those the false prophets. The Lord calls them foxes in a desert. Because pretty much they benefit off of entrapping Jake. Pretty much keeping Jake in that captive mind state, because they worried about their estate in captivity. They worried about making money. It says, as a cage is full of birds, so are their houses full of deceit. Therefore they are become great and waxing rich. They are waxing fat. They shine, yet they overpass the deeds of the wicked. They judge not the cause of the fatherless, yet they prosper, and the right of the needy do they not judge. You see, so you got these individuals in that spirit, but then also those that's following them, their deeds is surpassing the deeds of the wicked too, because pretty much they ascribing to these different customs. They going all out. When Jake get into when Jake get into something, he going all out. That's why we see Jake at the top of every sport, upholding that folly. You know.
Right. Hey, what it say? It said they follow earnestly, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that earnest goes into with a vigor, man,
Yep.
with all your energy.
Zealous.
Exactly, exactly. This is back in Second Maccabees 4 and verse 16. By reason whereof sore calamity came upon them, and that the heathen knew, that if we went away from our ways, that they'd be able to destroy us very sorely, man. Right? You read that in Jude the 5th chapter. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it says. Sore calamity came upon them. Jake, completely did away with their hedge. They forsook their covering, and now they were open, to attack from all sides. It says, by reason whereof sore calamity came upon them, for they had them to their enemies and avengers, whose custom they followed so earnestly, and unto whom they desired to be like in all things.
Mm-hmm.
For it is not a light thing to do wickedly against the laws of the Most High. But the time following shall declare all. It's like it. But the time following shall declare these things.
So pretty much, it declared the things then and then again. And in this time, if you ascribing to the ways of Babylon, America, you want to. If you're a female, you want to keep twerking. If you're a dude, you want to keep selling drugs. Doing the stuff that you learn in the world. The times following is going to declare. What's going to happen to you if you don't repent. You know, that's pretty much all I had though.
I'll grab this off the comment board. Jim is shining like Bob. Proverbs 10 and 23. It is as a sport to a fool to do mischief, but a
Mm-hmm.
man of understanding hath wisdom. Right?
Right.
We
So
see.
it,
I was
it
going to
said
go. That's like,
it says it's a sport to a fool to do mischief. Jake is into all this stuff like the Olympics and the customs, but Jake take wickedness to a new level. They try to see um who can commit adultery the most, who can smoke the most weed. Stupid stuff like that. They do it as a sport. It actually entertains them. You know, that's some stuff you'll see Esau doing that.
right,
We usually see Esau, going to the extreme, but Jake is seduced by the ways of the heathen. That's why they say we can tell that that comes from the heathen, because they say like white boy wasted stuff like that.
right.
You know.
They compare themselves to Esau. They try to match up.
Mm-hmm.
I got a quick one. Let me see if I can find it. This is Second Corinthians 6 and 17. It reads, "Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you."
Mm-hmm.
So we're commanded to be separate, from these individuals, man. We're commanded to keep our ways and to forsake their ways, man, regardless of how it's presented, regardless of how good it might look to the eyes, because
Mhm.
Esau has mastered that deception, man. He's a master warlock and witches, man. Right, and so these enchantments have you know strong power over Jake right now. But we're commanded to be separate from these things, right? And I wanted to get this word for unclean.
Okay.
Salak 6 and 17.
You said touch not the unclean thing.
God,
Kind of pretty much like you was going into it. Said to be separate. Not to pretty much repent from those particular lifestyles. You take on the ways of the heathen. As an Israelite, that's not beneficial in totality. Because again, comparing it to like if you had a manual for a car, and you putting in your car, you putting uh 87, or you putting diesel in like a luxury car, you gonna mess it up. So
right,
we was made by a different fashion. The Lord made us like that. Again, for the analogy, He made us the best car. So if you putting half-ass gas into it, you can get half-ass results. It's not gonna be able to
right,
run. It's gonna be sputtering and stuff. You know.
God. So this is for the word touch, and Strong's G 680. It reads, of the Levitical practice of having no fellowship with heathen practices, things
Mm-hmm.
not to be touched. Well, that's pretty much the point. Yeah. So to have no fellowship with heathen practices, man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of any sort. So we're commanded to separate ourselves and to completely forsake, the ways of Babylon the Great, the Westernization, right? The Romanization, the Hellenization. All these things we see taking place, being the philosophies being spread throughout the earth. Starting with the serpent. You know, where he said, "You shall not surely die," right? From that point on, we're supposed to separate ourselves from all those ways of thinking, man, and come back to the truth of the law, statutes, and commandments of the scriptures, man.
Con,
But that was it.
con. Well, Adoram Tazaz, by nigga Pa Lord's Word, that was a beautiful edification through the Spirit. Well, Adoram Tazaz, Adam Yashua Tawab. We can go ahead and close it out by saying, Call Light and Lab. Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shah, Bahasham Chah, Kodash. Hey, double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us the truth and rule well. And much respect to you, bros, out there pushing this truth with all righteousness and sincerity. Shalom, shalom. Wahayuam
Shalom.
Tawab, which is a good day. Abba
Shalom.
Ball, Kwam Yasha Allah. Hey, shalom.
Shalom. Baba.